"You missed a spot," Officer Daniel Hayes said, nudging the mop bucket with the tip of his polished shoe until it tipped, a wave of gray water sliding across the courthouse marble and soaking the cuffs of Marcus Reed's pants as a few people nearby let out quiet, uneasy laughs. Marcus didn't flinch, didn't look up, just reached for the handle and pulled the bucket upright, his movement slow, precise, like none of this was new, while Hayes stood over him, badge catching the overhead fluorescent light, voice carrying just enough for others to hear. "That's what you're here for, right?" And for a second, the hallway seemed to hold its breath as Marcus's eyes flicked briefly to the paperwork in Hayes's hand, a small detail, almost invisible, the kind of detail that didn't belong on a janitor's radar, but the kind that, if ignored, would cost far more than a spill on the floor. Marcus Reed had been working that courthouse for 11 years, long enough to know the rhythm of the building better than the people who walked through it, long enough to move without being noticed, to clean without being seen, to exist in the quiet spaces between footsteps and conversations that never included him. His uniform always pressed, his shoes worn but polished, his badge clipped low where no one bothered to read his name. Because to most of them, he did not have one, just another man, with a mop and a cart who came in before sunrise and stayed past the last echo of closing doors. And yet Marcus watched everything, the way files moved from hand to hand, the way officers rushed paperwork when they were tired, the way small mistakes hid inside official forms like dust in corners no one checked. And still he said nothing, because experience had taught him that men like Officer Hayes did not hear voices like his. They dismissed them, talked over them, laughed them off, reducing years of quiet observation into nothing more than a uniform that said he should stay silent, even when something was clearly wrong. Officer Hayes did not move on. He lingered, letting the moment stretch just long enough for more eyes to turn, for a small circle of onlookers to form at a polite distance. Clerks, attorneys, a couple of uniformed officers who slowed their steps without fully stopping, all pretending not to watch while clearly listening. And Hayes tilted his head slightly, looking down at Marcus like he was inspecting something out of place. "You ever think about doing something more useful?" he said, loud enough for the question to carry. A faint chuckle slipping from someone near the hallway bench, and another voice whispering something that drew a few more quiet laughs, the kind that were not loud but sharp enough to be felt. And Marcus kept his eyes on the floor, guiding the mop in steady lines. But Hayes was not finished. He lifted the folder in his hand and gave it a small shake. "This right here, this is real work, not pushing dirty water around." And a few heads nodded, not in agreement, but in discomfort. Yet no one spoke, no one stepped in, the silence itself becoming part of the humiliation, heavier than the words, pressing down as Marcus paused for just a fraction of a second, his grip tightening slightly on the handle before he continued, quiet as ever, as if the entire moment was something he had already decided to endure. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low and steady, not rising above the hum of the hallway but clear enough to reach Hayes. "Sir, that form in your hand, it is missing a required signature on the chain of custody." And for a brief second, the words seemed to hang in the air like something misplaced, unfamiliar coming from someone in his position, and Hayes blinked once before letting out a short, incredulous laugh, turning slightly so others could hear. "You telling me how to do my job now?" Tone sharper, edged with disbelief that quickly turned into something colder, more deliberate, and a few people shifted where they stood, the tension tightening like a pulled wire. Marcus did not step back, did not raise his voice. He simply added, "If it is submitted like that, it may not hold in court." And that was enough. Hayes stepped closer, not touching him, but closing the space in a way that made the difference in status unmistakable, his badge catching the overhead light again. Brighter now, almost blinding. "You think you know better than me? Than the entire department?" he said, louder this time, forcing the moment into something public, unavoidable. A couple of officers at the far end exchanged glances but stayed silent, and Hayes gestured toward the exit with a curt motion. "Why do not you stick to mopping floors and leave real work to people who actually understand it?" The words landing heavier than before as the hallway quieted completely, every sound fading except the faint drip of water from the edge of the mop. And Marcus stood there for a fraction longer than expected, eyes steady, as if weighing whether to say more, knowing that whatever came next would not just be ignored, it would be Punished. Marcus lifted his gaze just enough to meet Hayes for the first time. Not defiant, not challenging, just steady, like someone measuring a line before drawing it. And his voice came out calm, almost quiet against the weight of the moment. "Are you sure you want to do that?" And the question did not sound like a threat. It sounded like a warning, the kind that carried something deeper than the words themselves. And for a fraction of a second, Hayes paused, his fingers tightening slightly around the folder, the noise in the hallway fading into a low hum as a few people leaned in without realizing it, sensing the shift. And that was when he hesitated, just briefly, his eyes flicking down to the document in his hand, then back to Marcus, as if trying to decide whether to dismiss him again or to check. But the moment passed as quickly as it came, replaced by a scoff, louder than necessary, as Hayes straightened his posture, doubling down, choosing pride over doubt, while Marcus said, "Nothing more, only watching." Hayes turned away first, already signaling to move forward, his voice sharp as he called for the suspect to be escorted, the folder still in his hand, and signed, unchecked. And for a moment, everything resumed. Footsteps, radios, the low murmur of courthouse routine snapping back into place as if nothing had happened. But Marcus did not move. He stood there with the mop handle resting lightly in his palm, eyes following the document just long enough to notice what others missed, the missing line. Not just blank, but misaligned with the rest of the form. A formatting error that only showed up when the template had been altered, not by accident, but by someone who knew exactly where to hide it. And across the hallway, a junior clerk frowned slightly, flipping through a duplicate copy, her fingers slowing as she reached the same section, her brow tightening as if something did not sit right, while Hayes kept walking, confidence carrying him forward, unaware that the smallest detail was beginning to ripple outward, one glance becoming two, one pause stretching longer than expected, and then a quiet voice from behind, uncertain at first, "Sir, this section," not loud, not accusatory, just enough to interrupt the flow, and Hayes stopped again, irritation flashing before control returned. But this time, when he looked down at the page, his eyes did not move as quickly. They lingered, tracing the lines more carefully, and for the first time, the certainty in his posture shifted, just slightly, as if something beneath the surface had begun to crack, something he had dismissed too quickly, something Marcus had seen without needing to be told. The silence thickened as Hayes flipped the page back, slower now, his thumb pressing harder against the paper as if pressure could change what he was seeing, and the clerk stepped closer, pointing carefully. "The chain of custody requires a secondary authorization here. It is missing," her voice steady but edged with concern, and another officer leaned in, scanning the same line before exhaling under his breath. "If this goes through like that, the evidence could be thrown out," the words, landing heavier than anything said before, and Hayes's jaw tightened, his earlier confidence draining into something colder, more uncertain, his eyes lifting instinctively, not toward the clerk, not toward the officers, but back across the hallway to Marcus, who had already returned to his work, the mop gliding in slow, even strokes as if none of this belonged to him. And yet it did. Because everyone in that moment understood the same thing without needing it explained, that the man they had dismissed, the one told to stay in his place, had seen what none of them had caught a mistake that could unravel an entire case. And Hayes stood there, badge on his chest, authority still visible, but suddenly heavier, like something he had not earned in that moment, his voice quieter now as he said, almost to himself, "Fix it." But the damage had already begun, not to the case, but to his certainty. By the end of the hour, the hallway felt different, quieter in a way that carried weight, whispers, replacing the earlier laughter as words spread faster than footsteps. An internal review flagged, signatures rechecked, and the case paused before it could collapse in open court. And Hayes stood off to the side, no longer the center of attention, his badge still catching the same light, but no longer commanding it, while Marcus moved past him with the same steady pace, pushing the cart forward, leaving behind nothing but a clean floor and a silence that said more than any apology could, because, in a place built on judgment, the truth had not come from the loudest voice or the highest rank. It had come from the man everyone chose not to see, and that was the mistake no one in that hallway would forget.